Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to a new tutorial. It's me IJ and I'm back with a tutorial. Today we are going to DIY this beautiful gown that you are seeing on the screen. So guys, it's not difficult. Let's get started. As you can see on my table, I'm going to use our already drafted pattern, our already drafted bodice. This is the back panel. Remember, the gown we are making is a build-up neckline with crisscross at the back, so we are going to modify some things on our already drafted bodice. Here is my chest line and here is my waistline. If you don't know how to draft this, please check out my channel. I have a well-detailed tutorial on how to draft a basic bodice. So now here is our allowance. Our allowance is 1.5 inch. And here is the measurement we are going to use. That is the bodice. So the neckline we are using is 3 inches. So here is our 3 inches, and we came down by 1 inch as our shoulder slope, and we now connected it to the neckline. So now remember, it is a push-up neckline. So we are going to come up on these 3 inches. We are going to come up by 1 inch. It depends on what you want. You can make it higher, you can make it lower. So we are going to go up by 1 inch. So we are going to connect it on that point, the 3 inches. Do you see it? So we have connected it, and on this side we are going to come down by 1/2 inch. Also, first go up by 1 inch and connect it. Do you see it? Connect it. Afterwards, you now come down by 1/2 inch. Then you connect it with your armhole curve. Do you see it? And you bring it out to this side. So this is our back neckline. But remember, our shoulder is not in this form. So we are going to curve it with a C. You can use your curve, just little, or you can use your free hand to make a C, because our shoulder is not straight. Do you see it? So that is the way we are going to curve it. Do you see what I did here? So we curve it. So now we are going to measure what we have here, which we are going to use on our front panel. But before then, let us work out the crisscross back here. Remember, this is the nipple to nipple measurement, and I took in 1/2 inch on both sides. So on this chest line, I'm going to go out by 1/4 inch on each side to tighten the back. So I'm going to connect it back from this 1/2 inch. I'll connect to the 1/4 inch on the chest line, because it's going to be cut open. And also on this side, remember, this is going to have a yoke at the back. We are going to use net as the yoke. You can decide to come down by some inches, or you can maintain the chest line. I'm going to maintain the chest line as my yoke. So now on this part, this is the other part where we are going to create our crisscross. So I'm going to mark 3 inches on this chest line, and on the waist I'm going to mark 2 inches. So I'll now connect it. Do you see it? So we are going to cut this side open. That is where our crisscross is going to come. And on this back, remember, it is open. So from this neckline now, from this 3 inches neckline, I'm going to connect it to this 3 inches on the chest line. You can do it straight, you can curve it. The choice is yours. Do you see it? So this is the area we are going to use, and this we are going to cut out. Do you see it? But remember, here we are going to come down, because it's not going to be like this. We are going to have a little neck at the upper side. So we are going to come down by, let's say, 2 inches from this new neckline. The built-up neckline will now came down by 2 inches. Then we'll now connect it to this point, the allowance for the neck, the back. Do you see it? So here is going to have a neck at the back, at the upper side here. We are going to have a neck, so we are going to cut out this open. So now we are going to insert our measurement. The waist we are working with is waist 34. Divide it by 4, you are going to have 8.5, and this allowance that is going out 1 inch, we are going to add it plus 2 inches allowance, and also 1 inch to sew it together. That is 3 inches allowance. I'm adding 3 inches allowance. So when you add this that is going out is 4 inches. So on the chest, we are going to measure what we have. We are working with the chest of 40 inches. So we are going to divide it by 4. We are going to have 10. And we are going to also include our 1 inch that is going out, and also 3 inches on this side as the allowance. So we are going to now connect it to this point. So do you see it now, guys? We are now going to cut out this. So before cutting it out, we are going to use this neckline of the back to achieve that of the front. So what you have, so just measure what you have from the back neckline, because we are going to use it to achieve the front neckline. So from this build up that we now came up here, we are going to measure what we have. Just see the way I'm measuring it. Do you see it? What we have is 6 inches. So now we are going to keep it to work on the front panel. So here is our front panel. I've already drafted it. I also have a video on how you can achieve this. Please, you can check it out. So now I have drafted it. Here is my chest line, my bust point, under bust, and the waist. And the nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 4.5. On this bust point, I marked my 4.5, and I brought it down to the waist 4.5, and I marked a straight line. And on this chest line, I added 1 inch, so I have 5.5 on the chest line. So now I came down on the bust point by 1 inch, and also on under bust on each side I took 1 inch as my dart, and also brought the 1 inch down to the waist, and I connected it with my curve. Do you see it? So that is the way I achieved this. So now we are going to determine the radius to achieve where the upper part is going to start. So now the radius, we are going to measure the bust point to the under bust. We have 4 inches. So we are going to measure it round. Do you see it? We are going to measure it round. So now, guys, I have now drafted our 4 inches round, and I've just marked it. This is the 4 inches. Do you see it? So now the next thing I have to do for us to achieve our yoke, because before cutting this we are going to achieve our asymmetric yoke, is to transfer all this at the other side of our draft. So now I'm going to open it up, which I have done. So I have transferred it for it to be the same, so that we can achieve our asymmetric. Do you see it? So I have opened it up, so it is now open, so that we can achieve the asymmetric yoke that goes across the under bust. So this is the way it's going to be. So depending on the side that you want to use. So now I would like to use the right hand where the flare is going to be. Remember, it has a flare on one side of it, and on the other side it has a net. So now what you have to do is just to, this is the center point, this is the center point. So you just need to take any part of your choice. So I'm going to take it at this side, which is going to be the left hand side. I would like it to be at the left hand side. So now what I have to do is just to, now from here, from where our curve is going to start, from the upper bust. So now I'm going to connect it. So from this line I'm going to connect to the armhole. Do you see it? So do you see it? This is the armhole, and on this side I'm going to follow this to come to the bust point. That is to the bust point here. Do you see what I'm doing? Then I will now come across the under bust. And I'll turn this in this form. So this is the way we are going to cut our yoke. Do you see it? That is the way we are going to cut our yoke. So our yoke is going to be in this form to the under bust. Do you see it? So guys, that is the way we are going to cut it out. From the armhole, from this point, then you now connect it to the armhole. And from this, you come to the bust point here and also follow the same shape of the under bust. Do you see it? And you now go out. So the next thing I have to do now is to use my tracer to get a new paper and trace this so that we are going to cut out our yoke before cutting out the main material. So now guys, before cutting out the yoke, we are going to also work on the shoulder. Remember, it's a built up shoulder, so we are going to also come up by 1 inch. You can decide to make your neckline 3.5 inches, or you can remain on 3 inches depending on the neck size you want to achieve. So I'm going to make it 3.5 inches. So now I'm going to add 1/2 inch to our already trace. I'm also going to adjust it at the back panel. So here is going to be 3.5 inches the neckline, and I'm going to go up by 1 inch, which is here, and I'm going to mark it a straight line. Then I'll curve it. Remember, our shoulder is not straight, so I'm going to curve it also in this form. Do you see it? I'm going to curve it. Do you see it? So that is it. So now, remember, this is our main starting point. Here is the shoulder to the bust measurement, or the waist, or the under bust. This is where we started. So I'm going to come down from there. I'm going to come down there. I'm going to come down at 1.5 inch. Then I'm going to use my curve to connect it, depending on how low you want it to be. So I'm going to connect it a round neckline. Do you see it? So this is how it's going to be. You can come down equally by 1 inch. If you want it to be too high, you can come down by 1 inch, but I used 1.5. Do you see it? So it's here. Now that we have achieved our neckline, we are going to now trace it out on another paper to cut. See, I have traced it out, so I'm going to use my marker now to mark on it, which I will now cut it out later. So now, this is the yoke. This is the yoke. As you see, I have used my marker to mark on it. So this is our yoke, which we are going to cut out. So now we are going to leave it to work on the top. That is on the tube that is going to be inside. So now we are going to fold it back to cut out our tube. Just cut out our tube, but before cutting it out, we are going to take some inches in on the upper part, which that is on the chest. We are going to take 1/2 inch on both sides to tighten it up, and we are going to connect it here using our curve. You see it? So this is what we are going to now cut out. You can decide any neckline of your choice in the inside one, which is the tube. So we are going to go with a sweetheart neckline. So I'm going to come down here by 1 inch. On the center, I'm going to come down by 1 inch, and from here I'm going to connect it to make a sweetheart neckline. You see it? This is our sweetheart neckline. So now the next thing is to cut it out. Also add your allowances, which we have done, the waist, the chest, which we have done. So the next thing to do is to cut it out. Please, if this is too fast for you, you can check out how to draft a tube top on my channel. It is there, well detailed. So now we are going to cut it out. Remember, you are going to extend this to the radius that we came up, so we are going to extend it to there. If you want to cut it as a corset, then you are going to follow this, but we are not cutting it as a corset, we are cutting it as a tube top without corset. So this is the way it's going to be. This is the center and this is the sides panel. Guys, the next thing to do is to cut out our back panel. Remember, this side is going to have a loop, so it's going to be open, so we are going to cut it in this form. Remember, here is our yoke, so we are going to cut out our yoke first. Here is our yoke. Remember to add ½ inch on the upper side of your armhole to sew it to the front panel also. And that's the, so this is the side of the back panel that we are cutting out now. Do you see it? So this is our panel. So this is what we are going to use for the back. This is what we are going to use at the back. Do you see it? And here is our yoke. Our yoke is going to come here. Do you see it, guys? So the next thing to do now is to draft the down part. This is our down part, the fish skirt. Please, if you don't know how to achieve a fish skirt, I've made series of tutorials. You can check it out on my channel. So now I've cut it out. Remember, the length of this gown, we are going to measure the length. If you are making this gown, measure the length from shoulder to the floor length. What I have is 62, and I minus it the half length, which is 17.5 inches. So I'm left with 44.5 inches. So now this down part is our 44.5 inches. I added about 2 to 3 inches to make it a little bit longer. So now the next thing to do is to cut out where you want the main material to start. So from this, now from the waist to 16.5 inches is here. That is where I want the main material to start and to end. So now I'm going to cut it at 16 inches, which is here, because I need ½ inch to join it to the main material. So while using this to cut my main material, I'm going to add 1 inch to it to cover up the ½ inch that I took, and also to have allowance to sew it to the net. So here is the 16 inches. So now we are going to cut it out. So now here is my 16 inches. Do you see it? So this I'm going to use now to cut out the main material that I'm using. I'm going to use this. And remember, on the front panel, I did not add that. If you want, you can add that, but me looking at what you want to achieve, there is no dot on it. But at the back, there is that. So minus the front dot, but also use the dot of the back. So now I'm going to use this to place to the Ankara material and cut it out. And also show you guys the other ones, then we'll start fixing them together. Now guys, I've cut all our materials. Do you see it? This is the front panel. This is the front panel, and I've also added wording to them. Do you see it? That's the front panel. Do you see it? I've cut it out, and also the back panel, I've cut it out, and the front, I added wording to it. So the next thing now is to just to join them together, and also the lining. join everything together. And on our skirt, I've cut out the part that is going to be the material. Do you see it? I'm going to use it with the lining also to join the net. Do you see? I pin it. Just take your net and put in between your lining and the main material and sew it together, and you are going to have the full length of the down parts. Do you see it? You are going to have the full length of the down part. So I'm going to do all this, join them together and bring it for us to start fixing. Now guys, I've joined our panels together. This is the front panel. Do you see the inside? I added wording to it to make the bust come out. So now I've joined it, and also the back panels, which is not difficult, I've joined it, including the yoke. So now we are going to concentrate on the front panel, which has the asymmetric yoke. So this is it. So now I will use my yoke. This is the yoke that we cut out. Remember how we drafted it to cut out my yoke. But before then, on the under bust, remember we took away 2 inches as our dart. Just take your draft, mark 2 inches. When cutting it, put it together. This is the 2 inches now that we cut out as our dart. When you cut it out in this form, you are going to have excess on this under bust because of these 2 inches, because you have sewn it together. So what you have to do is to measure out the 2 inches and bring it together in this form. Do you see it? Put it together in this form and press it down. When you put it together, you press it down. But before then, just spread your yoke. Spread your yoke in this form. Do you see it? Spread it. You can take something to hold it. Then on the under bust, you now put the 2 inches together in this form and you press it down. Do you see it? So while cutting it, you will now reduce the 2 inches. Then you will now cut your yoke in a normal form. Just place it straight and cut out your yoke. You do this to avoid the excess 2 inches under the bust. So I have done it and I've cut out my yoke. So this is my yoke, and also I hemmed the neckline. Do you see it? So the next thing to do now is to take our top, put it in this form, then take your yoke. Remember, cutting it, you add ½ inch to join it to the yoke. So now I'm going to place it in this form. Do you see it? I'm going to place it in this form. Remember the armhole. You now place it. This is the armhole of this side, and this is how you are going to put it. Do you see it, guys? So this is how to place it. Do you see it? So now I'm going to use ½ inch to sew it. You can sew it in this form and use trim to cover it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fold it because I added ½ inch seam allowance. So I'm going to fold it. So I'm going to sew it in this form. This is the way I'm going to sew it, and after sewing it, I'll now turn it in this form, or you can fold it and sew on top of it neatly. You can fold it in this form and you sew on top of it. Anyone can go. So this is it. Remember, this is the armhole. Do you see it? After sewing it, I'll now add my lining. This is the lining. After sewing this on top, I'll add my lining. I don't want the sewing to come out at the lining. That is why I want to add the net first before adding my lining. So I will do that, and after doing it, I'll join the front and back together. And this is our down part of the front. Do you see it? I've joined it together. Also close it with lining. So after joining the yoke, I will also add the down parts and join the two together, and also the sleeve. This is our sleeve. Remember, one side will have a short sleeve and the other side will have a long sleeve before we are going to now achieve our flounce. Now guys, I've joined the sleeve, I've joined the front and back, and also I've joined our yoke. Do you see it? So beautiful. Let me turn it for you guys to see. Do you see how it is? I've joined it. That's the yoke. Do you see it? I've joined it, and also joined the short sleeve where our flounce is going to come. And also the other side of the sleeve is a long sleeve, and also join the down. Do you see it? our fish skirts. Do you see it? So everything is now complete. So the next thing I have to do is to take my flounce to attach to this one. Do you see it? To post the tutorial on how to achieve the flounce later, because this video I don't want it to be too long. So now I'm going to now measure. So how do you do it? You just take your tape. You see, take your tape and measure what you have here from the under the bust where you want it to start your flounce. You measure it, you come to the armhole, also you measure the opening of your sleeve. So that is how to achieve this. So now I'm going to do that, cut out my flounce and attach to it, and we'll now see the final look. Now guys, this is the final look of our gown. Do you see it? I've attached the flounce. Do you see how beautiful it is? Do you see our gown? So lovely. Do you see the nets that we replaced? Do you see how everything turns out to be beautiful? If this tutorial has been helpful to you, don't forget to like, share and comment on my videos. And if you have not subscribed, consider subscribing. Love you guys and see you in my next video. For now,